coming back and going down on their own. Click, toss the treat. It's very similar to shaping for a mat. It's just you're the mat. Good boy. And then waiting longer. So at first I clicked and threw the treat pretty immediately. Now I might wait a couple of seconds, 30 seconds, toss them. Click and toss the treat. And then when you start getting some, I'm gonna toss this over there, and then I'm gonna use one of his cues. Good boy. So that becomes a cue for him. So to start training that, bringing them down into that place, doing stuff like that, clicking, tossing the treat. So making that part of what tells them they're about to get the treat if they come lay on you. So once he's settled, oh, you know how to do this. So I'm gonna hold the treat in front of his face because he is gonna want to try to interrupt me because he knows this. Tossing the treat. Adding in some sounds, the sounds of distress. So with this, I have people video. Boy. Boy. Yes. Where'd it go? Oh goodness. So he's very excited right now. Now forward. Yeah. So I prefer him to be with just like his upper body on me, and I try to keep his elbows off of like digging into my chest. It really depends on the kind of dog that you're working with, whether this is going to be comfortable for you or not. You can also, a lot of times I'll do where I have them come up this way. And lay like that. And this might be more comfortable for somebody that doesn't want something up in their face. It really depends on what the person, what their trauma is, what their preference is on if they want the dog right up in their face or if they would prefer that the dog stays a little bit further down from them. It also can depend on the person's medical issues and like if it's going to be hard for them to breathe with a giant dog sitting on their chest. So really depends on what the person wants, but it's very customizable, and he'll default to doing that, to laying kind of on my stomach area, so that he can see where my hands are, so you can interrupt that. And then it depends on what additional things you're having them do, whether you want them to put their head down on your chest, or whether you want them to be able to continue to see what the rest of your body is doing. So if I teach him putting his head down and settling like that, but it's not something I necessarily make him do or require for him to do during DPT, because I do want him to be aware of if I'm picking at my fingers or if I'm doing something else. You also, with this, depending on what the cues are, you might need to work with some similar movements so that they don't go to DPT during normal movements. So with DC, that like hitting my legs is something I do, but if I'm just like scratching my leg or if I'm patting my leg, those are all things that he doesn't go to that movement for. So if I'm rubbing my leg, patting my leg, it's very specific to him which one makes him go into DPT. So depending on what the person needs and what their cues are like, you can work with some other things so that the dog doesn't just immediately jump to DPT. So So if he's over my legs, having his head down is fine because he can still see my hands and everything. And dependent on what the person wants. So with my legs crossed like this, it'd probably be uncomfortable if you tried to get like his full body up onto my legs. So having him just put his head on my legs is fine. That's enough that I can feel him breathing, I can feel his breath on me, I know he's there, he's warm. Having him close enough that I can touch his fur is helpful, and that's something that's helpful with grounding. And that's something that comes along with learning techniques with a therapist on how to deal with panic attacks. And using those textures of remembering, like, for a lot of the veterans that I work with, they touch their dog, they feel their dog breathing, the dog wasn't in Afghanistan, I'm not in Afghanistan, and helping them ground themselves to where they are with the textures and the warmth and the smells of having the dog with them. So it all kind of works together. It's definitely not a replacement for therapy, it's something that should come along with therapy and that can make therapy easier to deal with. It's just one part of a treatment plan. They're never a standalone. Always require a note or something from a treating mental health professional that they are seeing that states that they are not a danger to their dog. And especially with a lot of the veterans that I worked with that wanted nightmare waking, sometimes when they would wake up from a nightmare, they would be like swinging and like crazy about not knowing where they were, and they could accidentally hurt their dog. So with that kind of stuff, we would have the dog bark from a distance instead of getting right up onto the bed in their face. So I require them to fill out some kind of thing that says from that professional that they don't think that they're a danger to their dog. If they think that there's any dangerous tendencies, some ways that we can work through it, like having the dog bark instead of get up on them. Just so I know that the dog is going to be safe in those situations. Because in that situation, they're not going to mean to hurt their dog. But it's something that we do have to be aware of.